Hello again everybody, so today I'm back and today we're going to be carrying on my series of 2015 year-end videos. I'm going to be revisiting today something I did as one of the very first videos on my channel actually. Back at the end of 2014 I did a 2014 awards video where I went through loads of different genres and loads of different categories and criteria and picked my favourite 2 books, a runner-up and a winner. This year I've tweaked that slightly. And I'm going to be doing 5 nominees and a winner. And the 5 nominees are the top 5 books in this kind of category for me. And the winner is the ultimate one from the past year that I think has been the most fitting. It's been a brilliant year for reading. You'll have seen that a couple of days ago I did a video recapping all of the things I read in 2015. So I'll leave a link down below so that you can kind of see what I've read in the past year and how I'm choosing what's winning the awards this year. I'm going to split it into 2 videos. The one today is basically going to be all the different genres, so best fiction, best young adult, best sci-fi, etc. And then the next video is going to be my overall best character, overall best book, most anticipated for next year. And hopefully that way they won't be too long, and it'll be 2 really interesting videos. I'm really intrigued to see what you guys think. What were your favourite books of the year for each of the categories? So I'd really appreciate if you let me know what you think down below. So without further ado, I'm going to get straight into my first category, which is Best History and Politics of the Year. So these are books that are either basically roughly around history or politics in some way. You'll know I did a history degree, so this is a genre that's quite close to my own heart. And the 5 nominees are None of the Above by Rick Edwards, Who Governs Britain by Anthony King, The Telegraph History of the World, which is basically world history of the past 250 years in Telegraph newspaper articles. Everything is True and Nothing is Possible by a guy, I can't never pronounce his surname, but basically it's a book on Russian history and politics. Or Hiroshima, which is a republication of a John Hersey journalistic article from the 50s and 60s. All amazing books, loved them all, they've all been things I've absolutely blitzed through, but the winner for me is Who Governs Britain by Anthony King. So I think I've talked about this a few times on here. I read it around the time of the general election, and I just love this Pelican Introduction series. I've probably got 4 or 5 of them now, and I've always found them an absolute joy to read. This is basically an introductory look at the British political system, but it covers everything from how our voting system works, why it's better than alternatives, what the alternatives would be, kind of who has the power in our democracy, and it's just really interesting. And especially around the election, it was really eye-opening. It's one that I think is really readable and really good as an introduction, and they're just such nice additions that it combines everything to be my favourite history politics book of the past year. The next category then is very similar, and that's smart non-fiction. So this basically is one of those topics that covers everything else. So whether that's popular psychology, or science, or maths, or medicine, or anything on any kind of alternative non-fiction. And this is probably one of my favourite genres of reading overall. And this is one that I always struggle to pick a winner for. But this year, my nominations are Adventures in Human Being by Gavin Francis, which is a kind of look at combining the history of the human body and the history of anatomy with things from art and culture. Flash Boys by Michael Lewis, which is all about the stock market and the ways that it can be manipulated. The Psychopath Test by John Monson, which is, he's just one of the most amazing people in the world. Complications by Atul Gawande, which is a kind of look at the issues with modern medical practice. And Being Mortal by Atul Gawande, which is a look on dying and old age and approaching the end of your life and how we deal with that. If you've been watching my videos over the past year, you will not be at all surprised to know that my winner is Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. This is the first book that ever, and I think so far the only book that's got a 10 out of 10 rating on my channel, and it's one of the books that has sat with me all year long. It combines the best of being super readable, combines really interesting anecdotes with some really serious messages and some really serious food for thought. It's one that I've bullied so many people into reading, and everyone that has read it has just devoured it and been so enraptured in the whole concept. It's one that I think a lot of people should read. It's not an issue that people think about very often, but it is just one of the most amazing books I've ever read. I'm going to leave the link to the review I did back in January, February down in the description below, but I definitely advise giving that one a read. Next up then is Best Manga. So again, anyone that's been following my channel will know that I've increasingly become a fan of manga in the past year or so, and there's a lot of really good stuff I've read. A lot of this stuff is older and wasn't released this year, but I read it this year and it's kind of, this has been my awakening to manga, so I'm going to include it in 2015 awards. So my nominees for Best Manga for the year are Bleach, Fairy Tail, Dead Man Wonderland, Ju-Ra-Ra-Ra-Ra-Ra-Ra, which hasn't actually got that many Ra's, and Death Note. So these are 5 mangas that I've read at least 2 or 3 of this year. They've all been fascinating. Bleach was the first one I started out with and really got me into it. But for me, the only thing that could have won this is Death Note. And I specifically picked up Volume 2, which is my favourite of the kind of volumes. I suppose technically that's Volume 3 and 4 with the way these black editions work. But still, it's just the most interesting concept. And the 2 main characters, Light and L, are just incredible. They are so well crafted, they're so relatable, and they're just so interesting. Their psyches are so fun to kind of get inside of, and it's the relationship between those 2 and the way they think that is the most amazing thing about this. And if anyone's not read a manga before and wants to start with something, this is a great way in because it is so psychological, and it doesn't feel like a manga, it feels like it could be a really good psychological film, and just an absolute joy to read. Next category is Best Young Adult. So obviously there's a bit of crossover here, but I've gone mainly with things that have got kind of young adult protagonists and are kind of aimed more specifically at that market. It's a genre that I used to read almost exclusively, and I've kind of branched out a little bit more now, but it's still something that I really enjoy delving into every now and then. And this year I have read quite a lot of YA. So, my nominees for Best YA of 2015 are The Fire Sermon by Francesca Haig, The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness, The 100 by Cass Morgan, which did come out earlier but I read last year with the TV series, Endgame by James Frey, and The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. So it's quite a variety there. We cover everything from dystopia to kind of vague fantasy to sci-fi. It covers the whole range, and it's been a really good selection of books. There's a lot of things in there that I really enjoyed, and a lot of stuff, kind of sequels I'm really looking forward to. But from the minute I thought Best YA, there was only going to be one winner. That's The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. So I've talked about Patrick Ness a few times. He is probably my favourite author. It's such a clever concept. The basic idea is that there's this whole kind of zombie magical apocalypse going on, but this book isn't about those characters. It's about other characters living in the world as that happens. They don't have anything to do with resolving the conflict. It's just them trying to live in this world that undergoes these periodic apocalypses, and it's just genius. And the characters are a really well-rounded cast. It covers a whole ton of issues that is really good for the YA market, and I read it literally in the space of about 4 hours, and that is always a good sign. Absolutely adored this, continued my love of Patrick Ness, and is definitely the best YA of 2015. Next up then, I've kind of smushed together 2 categories to create the best genre fiction. So basically this is my favourite crime or sci-fi or historical fiction book of the past year. Again, sci-fi especially is a genre that I read an absolute ton of, and I've read a few crime books over the course of this year, and it's a really interesting selection I've got nominated this year. So I've got The Farm by Tom Rob Smith, Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, the sequel to Red Rising, The Colour of Magic by Terry Pratchett, because I reread the cloth-bound edition this year, especially with Terry's death. So it was a really significant book for me this year, so that had to make it to the list. The First Mistborn book by Brandon Sanderson, and Second Life by S.J. Watson, who wrote Before I Go to Sleep. So quite a variety, some crime, some sci-fi in there. But again, if you've been following my channel, and especially my year-end awards and things last year, you know, there's probably only ever going to be one winner, and that's Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. This is a proof, so it's not actually what it looks like. It's got an amazing design on the actual book release. But Red Rising, I adored, absolutely loved that. It's basically like Game of Thrones in space. If you combine Ender's Game and Game of Thrones, that's what this series is. And I thought the first one was amazing. The second one just kicks it up a massive notch. I would probably give this not 4 off a 10 out of 10. And it just combines all the best of fantastic characters, amazing storyline, real brutality, combines elements of kind of class struggle and racism, and it's just incredible. I cannot wait for the third one to come out early next year, and this is without a doubt one of the best sci-fi books I've ever read, never mind just in the past year. The last category then is just best general fiction. So discounting sci-fi and crime and historical fiction, this is my favourite remaining fiction book essentially. This isn't a genre that I used to read that much of, but since working at Waterstones I've really branched out into reading a lot of more general fiction, and this year I have read a real selection of amazing things. The nominations are Man vs Nature by Diane Cook, which I read for the Guardian First Book Award. That's a short story collection. The Heart Goes Last by Margaret Atwood, which is a really interesting kind of dystopian commentary piece on modern society. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, which is set in World War II, follows a blind French girl and a German youth. The Fisherman by Chigozie Obiama. Oh, it was close, it's always difficult. Which is set in kind of 1970s and 80s Nigeria and is about the relationships between this family. And The Bees by Lillian Paul, which unsurprisingly is about bees. All really good books. All of those I absolutely adored for completely different reasons, and actually it was really difficult to pick. But looking back over the year as to which of those I enjoyed reading the most and which has stayed with me, the winner has to be All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. So this is, as I've mentioned, set in World War II, which is not a genre I normally read, but a lot of people I knew raved about it, and it's just the most amazingly written, and the characters are so well crafted. The main character is a blind girl, which completely changes the way that the author describes everything, and it's so sensual, and so you can almost feel everything he describes, and it's incredible that he's managed to do that. The story is brilliant. It's got the most amazing sense of setting, and it's one that I still think about now, I still talk about now, and it's just one of the best fiction books I've ever read, and probably, well, definitely the best fiction I read last year. I'd advise anyone that likes books to read this. I don't think you need to be a particular kind of person, and if I liked it, and it's not my cup of tea at all, then that's a big seal of approval. So there we have it. That's the first half of my year-end awards for 2015. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the things I picked as the winner, what your winners would be for these genres, if there's anything you think I should have at least nominated or mentioned from my list that I've read. Like I said, I'll be back within a couple of days to do the second part of my year-end awards, which will be things like favourite character, best concept, and my overall best book of the year. But for now, I hope you've enjoyed. Please leave a like and subscribe and comment if you did. That would be really, really appreciated. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you with the second part of the awards soon.